give you a quick rundown of the things that we'll be discussing in today's webinar. We're going to have time for questions and answers toward the end, so if you have any questions, feel free to pass them along in the chat box at any point, and we'll make sure and cover all of the questions as well. But we're going to talk about a little bit of navigating in the software. We'll also talk about how to view some of the documents in the software for each of your applicants, letters of recommendation, transcripts, and applicant uploaded documents. We're going to talk about one of the features that we have in WebAdMIT called local statuses, which is designed to help you organize applicants, place them in different categories. So we'll talk about how that works, how to set those up, and how to change those statuses. And also we'll get into using the assignments feature in WebAdMIT, which can come in handy for reviewing applicants if your program decides to use that feature. It'll allow you to kind of organize what the results of each review assignment is, as well as kind of rank the applicants based on those assignments. So a handy feature to use, and we'll talk about how you can set that up. And we'll also get into working with new users, assigning permissions, and that kind of thing. And as mentioned, we'll have time for any questions that may come up. So that being said, we're going to switch to a view of WebAdMIT. And actually, right before we look at WebAdMIT, I just wanted to show you kind of the outside view. This is the page that applicants will come to, applicants to NAFCAS when they're filling out their application. So there's a few different sections of the application that they'll have to complete. There's a personal information section where they'll go through and answer a bunch of questions here. There's academic history where they'll enter the colleges that they've attended. There's supporting information, so they'll have to fill out any recommendations here. So letters of reference will, or evaluations and recommendations will show up here on the application, so they can request who their recommenders will be. And then we'll talk about how that works on the other side in a little bit too. So that's where they fill that part out. And then the last part of the application is the program material section. And here's where you can configure what items you want, what additional items you want applicants to have to respond to, whether it's additional documents or additional questions that you want to ask of your applicants. This is where those program-specific items, those items that you've configured, will show up on the application. So it's those 4 parts of the application that an applicant will fill out, and then they'll appear here in WebAdMIT. So what we're looking at here is a demo version of the software. So some of the things that you might see could be slightly different from what you'll see in your live environment. We'll try and point anything like that out if we come across anything. But this is, for the most part, going to be kind of the same functionality that you'll get in your version. So what we're looking at here is the dashboard. This is the first page that you'll come to when you log into the software. Just kind of a quick overview here. The left-hand side, this is the navigation panel. We call it the toolbar. So you can really use this to go to any different section of the application or of the software to view applicants or to create items, to export items. All that's available here. And what you see on this section, I should mention, what you see available, what you see listed on this left-hand side is going to be dependent on what permissions that you have in the software. And we're going to talk about those permissions and setting those up and things like that in a little bit as well. So that being said, we're going to take a look at one of our applicants' pages. So we're going to get there, we'll click on search at the top here. And that takes us to the list of all of our applicants. So this is a handy feature. You can search for any specific applicant. If you're looking for one in particular, you can search by the name. Or if you're looking for a certain group of applicants, you can search by local statuses, or you can search by the application status that we'll talk about, and find the applicants that you're looking for. So we're just going to click on one as an example. And this is the page that all of the applicants are going to have. So essentially everything that they've completed on the application is going to come back to this page. So you'll have their name, their contact information will show up at the top here. If we scroll down a little bit further, we'll get to their document section. And here's where you'll be able to see their full application. You can download a PDF version of that full application. So essentially everything that's on this page you'll be able to get in that document, and it'll give it to you in a nice PDF format. So you can take that and either save it somewhere on your side, or if you want to print it out, you'll be able to do that just by clicking on this link here. That'll download the PDF file for you. Also in this section, and in your live environment, this is one of the things that's going to look a little bit different for you. In your live environment, you're going to have different tabs here for the different types of documents. So they're going to be kind of split out. They'll all be under this documents panel here, but you'll have different sub-tabs that will show up here. So the evaluations, you'll have a tab for that, and you'll have separate tabs for transcripts and applicant uploaded documents. You can kind of click through here. In this demo environment, they're all kind of grouped together in the same section. But they'll all work the same way, so you can click on any of the documents that you're interested in, and it'll download that for you, and you can do whatever you need to do with it on your side there. Also for evaluations for the letters of recommendation that have come in, if we open up this panel here, this is going to be separate from the other document section here. You'll be able to see all the recommendations that have come in for the applicant. So here you'll be able to see the details of the recommender. So you'll be able to kind of look through to see what information has been entered by them. You can also see what they responded to. They had a certain number of a few different items that they had to rate the applicants on. So you'll be able to see kind of what they rated for each section by clicking on that evaluation details button there. And you'll be able to see how they responded to each of those. You can also see the overall recommendation, whether they recommend the applicant, whether they don't recommend, whether they highly recommend, so on and so forth. So you'll be able to see that right in the overall recommendation area. Now, just to show you, in our demo environment, we don't have any that aren't complete, but I just want to give you, I'm going to bring in another page here just to allow you to see what that's going to look like if there's documents that aren't complete, or recommendations that aren't complete yet. Here's just a kind of a screenshot of one here. So when the evaluations are completed, they'll show up like we just saw on the demo environment there. So it'll show up as completed. You'll be able to view the details and all of that. If there's an evaluation that, a recommendation that has not yet been completed, you'll see it show up here as requested. And the way that works is an applicant goes in and completes who they want to be, their recommenders to be, and then a notice will go out to each of those individuals, and then that individual will have to respond to the recommendation request. Once they do that, once they create an account for themselves and start working on that, they'll show up. You'll see their name will show up here, and it'll show up as a pending evaluation. And before that, if they haven't responded yet at all to the evaluation request, to the recommendation request, their name won't show up here at all. So in this case, what we're seeing here, there's two that are showing. The third one isn't appearing because the evaluator, the recommender, didn't respond at all to that request yet. So you might see this. If you see something like this, you can that'll let you know that the recommendations are kind of in the works. As far as the other two that aren't completed yet. So that being said, other things you can get on this page, you can get the personal information. The way this page is broken up, it'll give you different panels here. So if there's any panel that you are regularly viewing, you can leave it open, and WebAdMIT will remember your settings as far as which panels you had open, and it'll keep that for each applicant that you view. And if there's any panels that you know you don't really need to look at, you can close those off, and those panels won't be open for you, and that can just make it a little bit quicker to kind of navigate and find what you're looking for each of your applicants. So again, each applicant will have a page like this once they've submitted to your program, and you'll be able to kind of view everything that they've submitted on the application there. That being said, let's go back to the dashboard here. And the next thing I want to show you is the local status feature. Anyone with administrative rights in the software is going to have this management panel that shows up on the left here. And this is really for creating anything in the software. So for creating new users, creating sets of permissions, creating email templates, all of that is done right inside the management section. And we're going to talk about some of these other items momentarily here. But we're going to go to the local status option here first. And local statuses, essentially, they're set up to be like categories for each of your applicants. So you can almost consider it as if they were like a filing cabinet for all of your different statuses that you might have for applicants. So for each step of the process, you might have a different folder that you would put an applicant file in. And the local statuses kind of act as that electronic filing cabinet here. So what we're going to do, we just clicked on New Local Status, and we're going to create a status for new applicants. So we'll just call it that. And with each of the local statuses, you can tie them to one of the decision codes. And the decision codes are the universal statuses that NAFCAS has preloaded for you. So if there's one of these that kind of match what you're creating this local status for, you can select it here. In this case, we'll choose Received Under Review. Then there's an option for custom color that isn't required, but it just makes it, could make it a little more easily recognizable for you to find applicants that are in a particular status. So we're just going to select one there. Then the next thing that you'll see here, there's an option to send an email. And what that's going to do, if you have a particular email template that you want to go to each of your applicants once they hit a certain step in the process, once they reach a certain category, you can create that email template, and then you'll have an option here to attach that email template to your local status. So then what will happen is whenever you change an applicant to this new local status, it'll come up with a prompt asking you if you want to go ahead and send the email as well. And that's one way of kind of keeping track of which applicants you've contacted, which ones have received your, maybe you have like a welcome, thank you for applying type of email. And this can be kind of a way of keeping track of who's received that already and who hasn't. If you don't want to send an email with it, you can leave that blank. In fact, if you don't have any email templates created in the software, you won't see that send email option at all, at least until you create them. So we'll keep that selected. Then there's a description box here. This isn't mandatory, but if you want to kind of remind yourself what this local status is for, you can type out a description here. This is internal, so this won't go to any applicants. They won't be able to see any other details about this. In fact, when you change an applicant status, they don't get a notice. They don't get any update that lets them know that you've changed their status. So this is really all internal that you'll be working with the local statuses, and you'll be able to kind of just keep that categorization to yourself and to your team there. So the next thing here is programs. So it lets you decide if you have multiple sites that applicants can apply to, if you have different programs that they can select, they'll all show up individually here, and you can decide which ones that you want this particular local status to be applicable with. So we're just going to go ahead and check off that one, and we'll submit that. And now that local status is created here. We're going to slide it up to the top here. And we'll just go to Dashboard. And you'll see on the right-hand side, designations by local status. This gives you a nice view of your applicant pool. It lets you see how many applicants you have in each of your local statuses. So it'll give you a little number there. In this case, it's 0 next to most of these. But you'll be able to see the number that you have in each status. And then you can click on any of these, and it'll take you to the entire group of applicants that are in that particular status. So it's one way of kind of working with your applicant pool. With those who have been placed in the same category, you can kind of work with them in groups that way. So to change an applicant's local status, let's just go back to the search page here. And we're going to click on any of these. and they're all going to have this designation section. This is what will show you the site that the applicant applied to. Here you can change their local status. We're going to change it to the one we just created there called New Applicants. And you'll see once we've done that, it comes up with this prompt asking if we also want to send the email that was associated with it. So if we do decide to send that email, we can go ahead and hit send here. We also have the option to save it as a draft, to edit it before we send it, or to not send. So we'll just hit save as draft on that. And then the applicant's status has been changed. And you'll see once we change their status, it also changes their decision code. So that decision code is now showing as received under review. One of the questions that came up was in regards to that send email option with the local statuses. So if we go back to local status just to show you that part again. So this send email option, this will only appear if you already have email templates created in the software for it to choose from. If you don't have any created yet, that option won't be there at all. But to create an email template, you can just go down to this email template section here in management, type out what you want the email to be, what the subject of the email is going to be. And once you have that saved, if you come back here, you can add that later and choose your template right from this option here. Another question that we got was in regards to the recommendations. And actually, I can show you that when we jump back to the applicant page here. Again, this is the applicant view of the application, so this is what they'll look at. If we click on supporting information here and then recommendations, you'll see it gives them a place to put in 3 recommendations. This is part of the standard part of the application, so this part doesn't get configured on the program level. And unfortunately, you won't be able to adjust the number of recommendations that's being requested. So it's 3, as you'll see at the top here. They're going to be instructed to enter 3 requested recommendations, and the maximum is also 3. So for all of the programs in NAFCAS, that'll be the number that they'll need to submit as far as the number of evaluations. So they'll have a place for 3 of those. When they want to do that, they'll click on this button here. They'll enter the recommender's information, and once they submit that, the notice will go to the recommender, and then it'll be up to the recommender to kind of finish their side of the operation there. All right, so that being said, let's talk about the assignments feature in the software. Click on assignments. This is another item that shows up under management here on the left. And I'm going to click on new assignment type. And this part, again, if you have administrative rights in the software, you'll be able to create assignments. And the way this works is you're essentially creating a, you could use it as creating a worksheet for your reviewers. So you can tell them exactly what you want them to review, and then you can decide how each item is going to be scored on and all of that. Or you don't necessarily have to use it for all of that. You could just use it to kind of keep track of which applicants are being reviewed by which reviewers. But either way, so what we're going to do is call this, we'll just call this review assignment. We'll enable it for our program. And then you'll see there's a questions option here. Do you want to use questions? And what that's saying is, do you want to use questions for your reviewer? So it's going to give you a place to enter questions for each reviewer. And as an example, you can say review references. Then we can hit the plus sign to add another question here. Again, it's not necessarily a question, but really it's something that you're, what you're telling the reviewer that you want them to do. So we're going to add a couple items there. And then we can decide if we want the reviewer to be able to enter a score for each item. If so, we'll just check off that scores box. Or do you want them to be able to enter a comment for that item, or both? If we want them to do both, of course, just check off both there. If it's something that we just want them to comment on, we don't necessarily need them to put in a score, we can just check that one off. So we'll check both of those. We'll have a look at what this is going to look like for the reviewer in just a minute here. So again, add as many items as you need to, whatever your process would be, whatever you would need an applicant or a reviewer, I should say, whatever you would need them to look at, whatever you would want them to rank or score or comment on, you can kind of continue adding those different items there, and that will appear for them whenever they go to complete the review. So once you've added those items, then you can decide how the score will work for the applicant. If you do want them to be scored, you can choose from a few different options here. You can make it an average of the questions, meaning that it's going to take whatever the reviewer put in for these different items here, whatever scores they put, and just take an average of those. Or you can say sum, so it'll add those together. Or you can say entered by user, which will just give the reviewer another box to enter kind of an overall score at the end of doing the review. So it'll be up to you, kind of whichever one works with your process. You can make that selection there. We'll just choose sum for now. Then there's an option for overall comments, so we can check that off, and that just gives the reviewer another empty text box to type in their comments. And then lastly, there's an allow overall remarks option here. And what this is, if your process is for reviewers to kind of choose between a few different outcomes at the end of a review, you can establish what those responses can be. For example, we can say, recommend interview. We can say, do not recommend interview. I'll say recommend further review. Kind of whatever your options would be for an applicant to choose, or for a reviewer to choose from once they're done with the review assignment. You can kind of set those all up there, and those will be the items that a reviewer chooses from. Lastly here, there's a box for instructions, and this is just instructions for the reviewer if you want to give them some. And we'll see what that looks like on the other side in a minute here. So we've set our review assignment up. We saved it there. I'll reorder this here. And now, if I'm the person who's assigning the reviews to different reviewers, I'll just go into an applicant here. And I'm going to have this assignments panel that shows up. So each applicant's going to have this assignments panel. If I click on new assignment, it'll let me choose between the assignments that I have created. You can create as many different assignments as you want, by the way, so that we just made the one there, but you could create as many as you need if you have different assignments for different types of applicants or different sites or whatever the case might be. So we're going to choose the review assignment that we just created, and we're going to assign a reviewer there. We could choose multiple reviewers if we want. If we hold the control key, that'll let us do a multi-select there, so we can choose multiple reviewers at the same time. For now, we'll just select the one. Then we can put a due date in. It doesn't force you to do that, but if you do want to establish a due date there, and it'll help you keep track of which ones have been completed, which ones are still pending, overdue, and all of that. So we'll put in a due date. We'll hit submit. Now we're going to go to the dashboard here. And as a reviewer, I just assigned this one to the account that we're already logged in as, so we'll be able to see what it looks like. As a reviewer, I'm going to have this review assignments panel that shows up here on my dashboard. So I'm going to click on that. And here I'll see any applicant that has been assigned to me to complete their review. So the one that we were just working in is this one here. So we're going to click on that one. It takes me right to their page. And then if I go down to the assignments panel here, you'll see it shows me submit results. If I want to see the instructions that were established for this particular assignment, I can click here and it'll list out the instructions that were entered. If I click submit results, now I'll see that worksheet that was set up. So I'll be able to respond to each of the questions. So review references, say I want more information on what those references were, I can kind of push that off to the side. I can scroll down and I can look at the references that an applicant has entered. A review personal statement, I can do the same thing, kind of scroll down and find that. So this little widget will kind of stay open as you're viewing the applicant pool or the applicant page there. I'm just going to put in some numbers here. Put that in, and then we'll say complete assignment. So now that information is locked in there. So, so now their complete date's locked in, their remark that they chose from, their recommended interview remark that they chose, the score is there, comments that they entered will be showing there. So now all this information is kind of locked in, and that can be used in creating reports. If you use the export manager, you can get that information out, as well as you can use the list manager as an example. I'll just show you that real quick here. The list manager, for those who haven't experienced it already, the list manager lets you query for any item on the application. So if you want to query for all in-state applicants, maybe, or if you want to query for all applicants that are from that are not U.S. residents, whatever the case might be, this lets you query for whatever it is that you're looking for on the application. But it also can let you query for items that you've created, like the references. So for example, we can go to that, or I should say the review assignments is what I wanted to say. So if we go to the assignments section, we can say review assignment score, and then we can find all review assignment scores that are greater than or equal to, and we can put in a certain number there. So whatever number we're looking for. I can call this high score 1. We submit that, and then it'll come back with everyone. And actually, I think that's going to come back with no one because the score that we created was 13. But that's how that'll work. Then, if you were to find a bunch of applicants in this group, another handy feature here is that you can use the list actions button, and this will let you work with everyone in the list together. So you can take all these applicants that are in this list and assign them to a particular reviewer. You can send them all an email together. You can change all of their local statuses at the same time together. So it gives you some batch functions that you can do once you group the applicants in a list like that. So that could come in handy to kind of save you some time there. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is setting up users in the software, and we're going to talk about how to set them up and how to add their permissions as well. So in our demo environment, we have some admissions users already created here for us. They're already set up. I noticed someone has noticed the Marvel references that we have in there. Good catch on that. So we just clicked on New User to add those in. And we're going to put in a first name, so we'll just put first, last. And there's an option here that says title position. You don't have to select something here. This will be optional, but if you want to just indicate what type of user this particular user is, you can make a selection there. It doesn't come with any additional permissions or anything like that, but you can make a selection there if you wanted to do that. Then the next thing is email address. So you just put whatever their email address is here. So that's mandatory. That'll be what they use to log into the software. So you'll want to use their accurate email address there. It'll send them an email to set up their password when they first get their account created. So you want to use their accurate email address there. Then a couple more optional fields here. There's phone number, phone extension. There's primary user. You don't have to use any of these. If you want to enter what their phone number is, you can put that there for your own purposes. There's an option that says primary user. And this, again, it doesn't come with any additional permissions or anything. It's really just kind of a flag to note that this is one of your main users in the software. So you can kind of use that however you want, but you don't necessarily have to make use of that. So now the next thing that you'll see here is the work group panel here. Now, by default, in our demo, we have a few different work groups that are added here. By default, the only one that you're going to see is the one called WebAdMIT Administrators. And what that does, if you create a user and you put them in the WebAdMIT Administrators work group, that's going to give them full access to everyone in the software. So you'll have, this user will have access to the management menu, they'll have access to the reports and exports, they'll be able to see all the applicants that are within the programs that you check off here. So you're kind of giving them full access, the full administrative access if you give them that WebAdMIT administrator work group. If you want them to have anything less than that, what you'll want to do is choose a different work group here. So again, by default, you won't have any already created in there for you. So the way to set up that new work group is going to be to click on Work Groups. Then you can click on New Work Group. And here's where you can decide what permissions you want to go into a work group. Now, the way the work groups work, you're basically setting up a set of permissions, and then for as many users as you want to have that same set of permissions, you just place them in that work group. So instead of setting permissions individually for each user, you just set it once for a particular group of users, and then you decide who's in that group. So a common one is to create one for reviewers. So we'll just say application reviewers, and then you can decide what permissions you want them to have. A lot of these are pretty self-explanatory, being able to work with lists and exports, being able to change statuses, being able to send emails to applicants. So you can kind of look through the list here and check off the ones that are going to be needed. A couple that I'll point out here, there's one that says view all applicants. If you check that off, that means the members of this work group are going to be able to see everyone who's in the programs that we checked off on that previous page. Now that's there because what some programs like to do is assign applicants manually to their reviewers. So maybe they don't want them to see all the applicants to the program, they only want them to see the select few that have been assigned to them. Well, if that's the case, if you don't want them to see everyone, uncheck that view all applicants, and then you'll have to use the assignments feature and assign applicants to that to those users manually for them to be able to see anyone. So that's an option you have with the view all applicants. Another option that works with the assignments is view other users' assignment results. If you don't want them to be able to see what other users have entered for their assignment results, you can leave this unchecked. There's also one here that says manage assignments and interviews. If you want the user to be able to go in and edit assignments and interviews, make assignments for other users, you can assign that permission to them. If you don't want them to do that, again, just leave that unchecked. One last one I'll point out here is configure software. And this one, if you give them configure software rights, you're giving them access to the management menu here that we talked about earlier. So that's giving them access to create things in the software. It's essentially giving them administrative rights. So you want to be mindful of that if you're giving anyone the configure software permission there. So that's what controls what a user can do in the software. Whatever you check off is what they'll be able to do. Now, the second part of this is what you want each user in this work group to be able to see. So when we were on the applicant page earlier, we saw how it was broken up into different panels. Well, this section lets you see all of those panels and decides which ones you want the members of this work group to have access to. So if there's any particular panel you don't want them to see, if you don't want them to be able to see the work experience of an applicant, or if you don't want them to be able to get to the ethnicity information, or whatever it is you don't want them to have access to, you can just kind of leave it off. Anything that you do want them to have access to, you can either click individually, like we're doing here, or you can click this green plus sign and it'll add all the subtabs that are under this category. So whatever you want the applicant to be, the user to be able to see, kind of just go through and click that green plus sign. And then once you're set on that, what you want the users to see and what you want them to do, then you can go to the bottom and click on submit here. Now that work group is created. So now if we go back to either create a new user, if we click on new user, or if we edit one of our existing users, we can click on the pencil there. And now within this list of work groups is going to be the one we just created. So if we assign an applicant to that, or assign a user to that, and then hit submit, those permissions will automatically populate over right away. So that's how the user feature works. And that being said, those were the main things we had on our agenda to cover in today's session. So we wanted to leave a nice amount of time for any additional questions that you might have. Feel free to pass those along in the question box. And if there's any additional comments, anything else I should cover or that we should mention, you could let me know as well. Okay, so one of the questions that came up was in regard to the GPA Overview panel. And this, Phaedra, you might be able to chime in on this one. The GPAs that applicants are going to have, if you can remind me, is NAFCAS, is it going to have coursework entry for the applicants or no?
No, it's just the overall GPA on the graduate transcript that's entered by Liaison.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, so an applicant will turn in their graduate transcripts, and then what you'll get in that GPA overview panel. Let's just go back there to show everyone what's being referred to there. If you go to the GPA overview panel, it's not going to look like it looks here with all of these different, with all the different GPAs that are going to be listed in our demo environment. But you'll have that graduate GPA listed out for you in that panel.
An important point, I think, to know here, too, is that once an applicant is in verified status, that's when you'll see the GPA. So the only difference between complete status of an applicant and verified status is the GPA entry into the application.
Thank you for that, Phaedra.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see. Other questions? Okay, so another question that came in was in regards to the verified applications. So it was asking if the applicant only has 2 letters of recommendation with one pending, should they wait for the third? Should they wait for the third recommendation to come in before working on it? And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Phaedra, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the way that it's set up in or actually no. I guess they can actually see the applicants before before all of them are completed. So the way that would work is, as long as an applicant enters who their recommenders are, they'll be able to complete the application and proceed through. So it'll really be up to you if you want to wait for all 3 to come back before you start evaluating the applicant. It'll be up to your process if you want to start ahead of time or if you want to hold off on those and then kind of proceed from there.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point. And it's really up to the sites and the requirements of the sites. But for an applicant has to fill out 3 of the recommendation requests. But to complete the application, they have to have 2 in. So it's really up to the site whether or not you want to move forward if they are complete and verified and missing the 3rd letter of recommendation, and that is a requirement for your site. It's up to you. But the 3 letters of recommendation are the most they can enter, but 2 will complete the application.
Awesome. Thank you, Phaedra. Let's see, another question. Okay, so how do applicants get verified if their transcripts have not been processed and uploaded? We've seen this happen a number of times with international applicants. Now, Phaedra, is that different for international applicants? How does the verification work with those?
Well, for international applicants, it is a little bit different because we don't require them to send their international transcripts directly to us. And so therefore, there's no GPA required that we extract from their international transcript.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see. Looks like we got another question in regards to the send email option. Just to kind of go back to that section here when we were looking at the local statuses here. So we mentioned this send email option that shows up here. This will only appear if you have email templates created. Not only that, let me actually just go to the email template section to show you here. you'll have to have the email template created, and you'll have to have it enabled for your program. So if you turn that on, if you create the create the email template, give it a name, fill out all this information, and check off the program that you want it to be applicable for, make it active here. Then when you go back to local status, and you go to either create or edit a local status, excuse me, create or edit a local status, then you'll see that send email option for you. So another question was in regards to how long does it take for materials to process in the software. Some applicants have expressed concerns with meeting the deadline, since it could take a couple of weeks to process. Phaedra, you might be able to chime in on this better than I can. What can we expect as a turnaround once an applicant submits?
That is a really great question, and Joyce and Lindsay and I have had multiple discussions on this. We have a customer service NAFCAS team here that is really trained to work with applicants to be able to let them know that sometimes it does take a little longer than anticipated to get transcripts from the institution to us, as an example, and get processed. But typically in reality, once a transcript does get to us, it typically, once we have it in-house, when we process it, it usually takes, it's a pretty quick turnaround time. Internally for sites and associations, we like to say it usually takes maybe about 24 to 72 hours to get it processed, scanned, uploaded, Social Security number redacted. It's a very quick turnaround time. We let applicants know it might take a little bit longer just in case something happens, or just in case we don't receive it, or something happens from the registrar's office or the mail to us. But it's a pretty quick turnaround time. I would say the longest, coming from admissions formally, what usually takes the longest is the transcript actually to get to us here. I would say also what I'm seeing is recommendations sometimes take a little bit. An email is queued and requested from the applicant to the recommender. So the recommender is getting notification that they're getting a request from that student to be able to provide a recommendation, and so that sometimes takes a bit, but that's out of the hands of Liaison, it's out of the hands of the applicant. What I do recommend the applicant to do, and we do suggest this when we talk to applicants on the telephone, is they can send another reminder to recommenders. They can give them a call, they can send them the email. We just want to make sure they get that information in, because I think, we've seen in the past working with other associations and other sites or other schools is that, the applicant could have everything in except for their recommendations, and that could slow the whole process down. So I recommend that they get everything in as soon as they possibly can. But once we have it in-house, it moves very fast. We have a very efficient process, and we try to move it very quickly.
Awesome. Thank you, Phaedra. Okay, so other questions. Okay, so there was another one asking about the local status options here. So this is a good question. It was asking if you don't have a send email option when you create the local status, and then later on you change it to have an email template, that the applicants automatically receive emails. So the answer to that is no. So if you've changed the status, if this were created initially without an email attached to it, and then a bunch of applicants were gone in and changed their status to this local status, and then later on you go back, add an email template to this one, those ones who were previously changed, who previously had this local status, they won't automatically get the email. So the only way to get them to get the email is to go back and change their status again to this local status, and then it'll come up. If they hadn't already received the email, it'll come up with a prompt and ask you if you want to go ahead and send it. Otherwise, it'll only change it. It'll only send that email going forward for applicants that get this local status. And also, kind of to go along with that, the software always prompts you before it's going to send an email, so it comes up with a little box that'll say, do you want to go ahead and send the emails? So in any situation, you don't necessarily have to be worried that something's going to go out without notice. You'll always get a little prompt that says, that confirms that you're sending the email, and you'll have the ability to turn that off or say no to it if you don't want to. All right, so just looking through to see if there's any questions we haven't gotten to.
The one thing I did want to note too, going back to turnaround times, just reading through the chat box too, talking to Lindsay too, we did have some concern from applicants regarding the deadlines and having our customer servicing is going to take several weeks to turn around their transcript or turn around some information on their application. We have worked with our customer care team to curve that language too because of the deadline. We don't want to create such anxiety, but we do want to create some urgency to this, considering the deadline is 3 weeks away. So we have curved that communication. I just wanted to make a note of that.
Thank you, Phaedra. All right, so that looks like that's all the questions we have so far. Any other comments from Phaedra or Lindsay? Anything to add?
This is Lindsay. Going off some of the concern around transcripts, we would like to note that while verified status is the end goal for the applicants, as long as they are listed as the complete status by the October 3rd deadline, then that means that they have completed all of the necessary materials, everything's been received to Liaison, and their application is complete. When they are in that completed status by the October 3rd deadline, and they have completed everything they need to be considered for the fellowship. And this is just important when you're reviewing applicants that maybe waited until 11:59 on October 3rd to submit their application, because in order to verify the GPA, then Liaison may need another 24 to 48 hours to do so, depending on the volume of applicants that didn't submit their application right up until the deadline. So while you're reviewing come October 4th, you should definitely still take all of the complete applicants into consideration, and you can also do it pending their GPA verification, but all of their materials were received by the deadline if they're considered complete.
Awesome, thanks, Lindsay. Anything else, Phaedra or Lindsay? Any closing comments at all?
I would recommend, if there's any questions that anybody has while they're working through WebAdMIT, we recognize that it's a very robust tool with a lot of information, and it has a lot of tools to be able to navigate and to be able to manage all the applicants. But please, I recommend contacting our support team, our WebAdMIT support team that's here from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and we're here to take any of the phone calls that you have. You can email us, you can phone call us. I know that Lindsay has sent some information out, but I just want to make sure that we're getting all your questions answered as you're going through this process, the interview process, and making these decisions. We want to make sure that you're very comfortable with the decisions you're making and how you're tracking that information. I believe you might have shown this information, or you have a slide on it too, but the WebAdMIT support number is 716-636-7777, and the email address is webadmitsupport@liaisonedu.com.
All right, well, thank you both to Reggie and Phaedra for taking the time to do our final WebAdMIT training for this application cycle. We truly appreciate all of your help, especially with this being our first year of the launch. And to those of you on the call today, thank you for joining. I hope this provided you with useful tools for the next steps of your application process. And that being said, we also have an NCAF breakfast meeting in Chicago on Friday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And this is an optional meeting to come to connect with other members and hear updates for NCAF. And Phaedra will also be giving a presentation on how the first NAFCAS launch went this year. So please let me know if you would like to come, and I'll send you the registration registration link, for that meeting. We would love to have all of you there. And lastly, this training was recorded, so I will send out a link to view the training again, as well as a survey to see how it went and what we can do to improve for future trainings. But that being said, thanks again for all of you taking the time to join us today, and hope you have a good one.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.